left-hand corner.
Okay, so John's going to give the names of as many as he can of the Home Guard, the Almley Home Guard, starting at the top left-hand corner of the picture. Okay, John, off you go.
Right, thank you. The first person was a man called David Jenkins, known as Di Jenkins, from Hopley's Green Farm. So he was a farmer. And then there are,
Yep.
Then there are two people I don't know.
Okay, two not knowns.
The next person is a Mr. Bert Gurman. That's Gurmin, and Bert Gurman was a gardener. The next person was Mr. George Jenkins, brother to David Jenkins, who was also a farmer.
Do you know where he farmed?
Hopley's Green.
He was Hopley's Green as
They
well.
They were brothers at
Yeah.
Hopley's Green, yeah.
Yeah.
Then the next person was Mr. Donald Lewis, who was a farmer.
Okay, got him. Yep.
I am not sure of the next one, so I put a question mark on him.
Yep.
Then there's Mr. Cecil Davis, who was also a farmer at Kinnersley.
At Kinnersley?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The next one I don't know.
Okay.
The next one is Oliver Seeger. Oliver, Seager.
Okay.
And he was the head at Almeley School.
Really?
Yeah.
Gosh.
Then the next I don't know. The next was Bert Mills, who was a farm worker at the Bridge Farm.
Ah. Was Bridge Farm still...
Bridge Farm Almeley. Yeah.
And was that already owned by the Morgans at that stage?
Under Mr. Arthur Morgan.
Aha.
And the final one on that column, on that line, is a Sidney Skyrme.
Oh.
Skyrme, who had the other farm at Hopley's Green, which we later acquired.
So the Skyrme, Martin Skyrme, of course, is still there, down on the opposite Bridge Farm.
Yeah.
Is farming there, isn't he?
And on the second column across, there are four people I don't know.
Okay.
The fifth person is Owen Davis, who his grandson Sam is now living at Brick House.
At Brick House?
In the village, yeah.
In the village there?
In the village.
Ah, well.
Yeah. Owen's father's name was Sam. He was a lay preacher and a farmer. Small farm.
He's recently moved into Brick House, hasn't he?
I beg your pardon?
I think he's fairly recently moved into Brick House.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Very, very recently. So that's Owen Davis, yes. Then the next one is he's Arthur, always called Artie Goodwin. Now Artie Goodwin is not related to Terry Goodwin's family, but he lived where Mr. Cripwell lives now.
Oh, at Upcott.
It was a separate, lower Upcott. It was a separate, about 50-acre holding. And his mother was a sister to Arthur Morgan. So, but anyway, that was Artie Goodwin. Then the next one I think is interesting. I can't remember his Christian name, but his surname was Hurdle.
Hurdle.
And he lived at the Dower House here, and he was a chauffeur to a lady called Mrs. Turner.
Well.
Then I don't know the next one. The next one is Mr. John Goodwin. Now that is Terry's father, who was a farmer, of course. Tom Skyrme is the next one. He's also a farmer.
Would he have been related to the other Skyrme?
Yes, he was a brother to no, we haven't come to the other one yet. We only had one Skyrme.
Yes. What?
No,
we had an earlier Skyrme.
That's it. Well, anyway, And then the next one is Ivor Morgan, who was, as far as I remember, was a labourer. I do not know the next one. The next one was Richard Davis, and he was a labourer, and I don't know the last one. The third bank.
Yep.
The first three I don't know.
Okay.
The fourth, his name was Jack Jones. He was retired. I know he was retired.
And he's got stripes on his arms. So
yes,
he must
indeed.
have been...
Yes, he did. And he sang bass in the church choir when and he lived virtually opposite the church, one of those cottages there. The next one, I can't remember his name, his Christian name, but his surname was Wood, and he was a publican at the back at Wunton.
Well, and he was a sergeant as well. He's got 3 stripes.
No, I went the wrong somewhere.
Has he got 3 stripes there?
Jack Jones had 2.
Yeah.
And anyway, his name was Wood.
Yeah.
And he ran the back at Wunton. He was a publican. Publican. Then, not known, the next one I don't know. Then there's Bill Smith, who was a farmer and father of John Smith.
Yes. Oh, our John Smith. Margaret's
Wunton
husband.
John Smith.
Yep.
Don't know. And the next one with the moustache, I talked about him before, a man called Sidney Dew.
Yes.
And he's wearing stripes.
Yes, he is. 2 stripes he's got.
Yeah. Sidney Dew, I think we could loosely call him a gamekeeper.
Ah.
And then the last one is another John Jones, who was a farm worker.
So just to be clear, John, then this one, which one was Dew?
That's Sidney Dew.
That's Sidney Dew.
That's Jack Jones.
Yeah.
And sorry, I don't know that.
Okay. Yep. Got it. Very good.
Is this working out?
Yes, absolutely. It's brilliant.
And then in the front, I'm pretty sure that his name is Taylor, and it would be his son Ken Taylor, who runs a big farm, Newton Court at Kinnersley. I don't know the next one. The next one was Leslie Jones, and he was a farmer at Wunton. The next one was Len Davis, another farmer. Then I don't know the next one. Then there's another Owen Davis, which he farmed at Castle Froome.
Oh.
You know, on the way to the bridge.
Yes, yes.
And it's rather strange because his wife and the other Owen Davis's wife were both called Violet. So we had 2 Owen Davises with 2 Violets. Yeah. Where was I? And then the last one was Richard Phillips, who was another farmer.
It's really helpful, John. And what's really interesting is how many of them were farmers compared with the few farmers we've got now. I mean, in Almley, what?
Well, of course, you see, what has happened in the agriculture industry, people who used to work on the land make the machines, don't they?
Yeah.
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 I mean, we have this land opposite here. This first patch is 26 acres now.
Mm-hmm.
That would have been a terrific job, you know. The combine did it in a day.
Yes.
And not only is it cut it, but it's thrashed it.
Yes, because they had an extra operation.
Because that was the one thing on farming, in my experience. One thing I could not stand was thrashing. It was a terrible job. See,
what did it involve, thrashing?
Pardon?
What did you have to do to the thrashing?
It's quite clever really, and you see, people they used to call them thrashing boxes, and there were teams that were based in most villages. Farmers never had one, or very seldom. But they said, right, Mr. Goodwin up with 2 days thrashing. He may not thrash all the stuff. He may have got a demand for so much.
Yeah.
So the machine comes. In the early times, it was towed by a steam engine and driven by a pulley from the steam engine.
Yep.
Same engine not only pulled it, but it provided the power.
Yes.
Then you had, and of course, the corn is in sheath.
Yeah.
When you cut corn with a binder, you always cut it later than you do with a comb. And then it stood for 2 or 3 weeks in the field in stooks.
Yes, I know the word. I've never seen one.
Yeah, I've never seen one.
Never seen a stook.
I put up hundreds of them. Anyway, and then the sheaves were hauled into mostly into ricks in the early days.
Yep.
People couldn't afford barns, and then they were into buildings, and they stayed there then to go on drying and so on. The thrashing machine would come, and I'll come back to the thrashing machine in a minute, but it also had one of two things. It was either a baler for the straw, and that was what they call a stationary baler, and the bales were made of compressed straw and tied together with wire.
Mm-hmm.
It was as the straw came out of the back of the machine, it fell into the hopper, and then there was a chap minding this thing, and he had to put a needle through to separate the bale.
Huh?
Or the other thing was I can't find this word anywhere, but they were always called boltings.
Bolting.
Boltings, and we always spelled it B-O-U-L-T-O. Bolting, B-O-U-L-T-I-N-G, bolting, and that was like a very big sheath, except that it was thrashed straw.
Yep.
It'd probably be the contents of 3 or 4 or 5 sheaths would make one of these, and they were tied up with string, with the same mechanism that was on the binder to tie. Have you seen a binder working?
No, I've only ever seen a half combine harvester.
Well, with the binder, they were quite wide when the bed was down, but to transport them, they turned it round. With the binder, there was a knife going like this. Which cut the corn off.
Yep.
It fell onto the bed of the thing, and a canvas sheet would take it up round. And then there was a 3-pronged sort of guy as well. This thing would come round, pull it round, taking the string with it.
Yes.
So there would be a string, only one string with this tiger, and then it would automatically be cut off and ejected.
Yes.
So you can imagine the early days was quite a thing.
But amazing.
The big bales, they were very handy, but I preferred the boltings because the straw was pretty well as it was, and with the other it'd be all banged up together. Anyway, going back to so you would either have a trailer with sheaths on,
yep,
or more especially out of a barn. And you've seen the old thrashing barns.
Yes.
Well, they had all the parts of that barn had a use, and one of the uses was that when the thrashing machine came, the thrashing machine drove into the barn, and then we call it pitch the sheaf. You'd have a man on the top.
Yes.
There is actually a thrashing machine on one episode of Dad's Army.
Brilliant.
You've seen it?
No, I don't think I have. I must look back.
Watch out for that one.
Yeah.
And they're fooling about there, but it actually was a very, very dangerous thing. Anyway, you'd have a man pitching one at a time, a sheet up onto the man stood on top of the machine
Mm-hmm.
with all this stuff lying around there, and his job was to cut the string, and put it into the thing, and then all the works to go, and out of the one end you would come the thrashed corn,
Yeah.
and out of the other, and above it would come the would it come back or be other. Anyway, the thrashed straw would come out, and the opposite end. That's right. And then the corn would go into bags, Hessian sacks.
Yes, the sacks, the old Hessian.
Usually 2 1/4 underweight.
Whoa! So you had to be lifting
And
those.
for some reason, which I never understood, the granaries were nearly always up steps. Whether it was to do with vermin, I think it probably was. Anyway, the man on the top, he said the thing. The machine does all the work. There's a big drum, they call it, and it flattened the thing against the screen. I'm not exactly sure how it worked, but it separated the chaff
Yes.
from
the grain.
From the grain.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then the chaff, and they call that rowings. It was a horrible, dusty, miserable job, And as I say, it was quite a bit of danger. I know one man lost an arm.
The one on top of the thrashing machine.
For some silly reason, got his arm in there. Then you'd end up, of course, with all the sacks of grain which had to be shifted. And,
Yes.
And the straw. But that was the process. You cut it with a binder. The binder delivered it in like little bundles called sheaves.
Yeah. Yeah.
You later on, immediately you'd have people there sticking it up straight away.
Yeah. Yeah.
2 or 3 weeks later, you'd haul the sheaves. And then at some time, perhaps then, or perhaps later, or perhaps a bit of both, the thrashing man would come and set it all up. And
So taking that whole operation from field to sacks of grain, would the men who did that, would they all have been from the one farm, or would people have come in from other farms to give a hand?
Yes, it
with
was
the process?
quite a lot of that.
So you weren't either a farmer or a labourer. You might be a bit of both.
For example, Terry's father would have certainly had 3 men, and 3 men and a boy.
Mm.
But when it came to thrashing, they'd probably get a neighbour to a couple more.
Yes.
And then Mrs. Goodwin would be busy making tea, and
Yes.
always had a good lunch.
Well, you're using a lot of physical energy. I
Oh
should think.
yeah. And then of course the tractors came, and then after the war, sometime after the war, they developed the pickup baler,
Yes.
which meant that following the combine, the baler could pick the straw and bale it.
Yeah, and bales, yes.
And then you got a nice neat bundle and
But John, what's interesting, I've been very used these last years to the big circular bales.
yes, yeah.
But yesterday, day before yesterday, we were driving up to London through the Cotswolds, and there were a lot of bales there, which were the square ones, or at least the oblong ones.
The last few years, they are more of an industrial sort of job.
Yeah.
There's a firm, Tin Hill going. As you drop down, there's a big farm on the left, and they not only farm, but they are contractors.
Yeah.
Because those machines are probably 40,000 or 50,000 pounds.
Golly, yes.
But that's a different ballgame. But they can make them into. It's very, very handy to haul and things like that, because The round bales have been very good. I used to like the round bales because it's the straw is pretty well whole. With a lot of these processes, the straw gets smashed to bits.
Yeah. Yeah. Whereas with the bale, with the
see,
circle.
the wonderful thing also with Guy now, my neighbour Andrew Priest over here, they're not uncommon, but he's got this machine. They put one of those round bales on, and then the tractor takes it along with a spout to a trough, and it feeds the silage into the trough. And then when they want to litter it, they've got a blower on there and it blows the straw all over. You can see why there are very few men want it.
Very few. Well, certainly looking at that photo,
Yeah.
compared with now, I mean, it's a completely different world. I'm just going to have a look at this. I think, yep, that looks going well. That's good. That's fine. What I wanted to ask was, you were saying about some of these people who are farmers. What sort of size would have been normal for those sorts of people? I mean, are we talking 100 acres, 50 acres, 500 acres?
Anything from sort of 5 acres upwards, but none of them would be very big.
Right, and you could make a living out of...
I'm trying to think. Mr. Upcott, Terry bought some land to it later on, but it was just a bit under 200.
Right.
That was considered quite a fair-sized farm.
Yes.
The lower Upcott, which was the one he bought, that was 50-something.
Mm-hmm.
When the council, when the government or the council, in their wisdom, said they'd provide farms for homes for heroes in the First War.
Yep.
The estate, by and large, was split up into units of about 40, 50 acres, 30, 40, 50 acres.
And you could make a living out of 40 or 50
they
acres?
can make a reasonable living. And Oldcastle, you see, which was the home farm for the estate, that was somewhere around 200 acres.
Yes. And that would have been considered
Yes,
quite a size.
and you'd have several men working there.
Yes.
And of course they had the walled garden.
Yes, indeed, yes.
And all those things, you know.
And this photo would have been taken, what, in about 1940
Yes,
something?
My friend Pauline was here just before you came, and she asked that, and my guess would be somewhere in the mid-40s.
Yes. So during the war...
Oh, I'd say during.
Yeah, so pre-45, somewhere 43,
Yes,
42.
I would say so. My brother was 18 in May of 45.
Yeah.
And he was the last serviceman to be called up in Almeley. But I don't know why, but he wasn't called into the Home Guard. And neither my father was, neither if it comes to that. But and he'd been in the First War, but he never went abroad. He was fortunate.
So would any of these ones have been called up to serve? So if it was 43...
Well, it's pretty much, I think, you see, Dad's army was very accurate, really, because you had Pike.
Yes, this the lad. Yes.
And Leslie Jones on the bottom of the picture, who I said a farmer, the fair-haired lad kneeling on the bottom.
Yep, got him.
He'd have been, my guess, a late teenager.
Yes.
His son still has land at Wonton. And his grandson is the chairman of the cricket club, Tom Jones.
Of course, as I'm being a vice president of the cricket club, I've had a note from Tom Jones. Of course, I'm not sure whether I've met him. Yes, I have met him. I met
He's
him
a
with you
super
one
chap,
day, I think.
Super chap. Yeah, well, you know, you could see. I think I might have said to you that there was a Spears Marsh house, you know.
Yep, I know.
There was a lady lived there, Mrs. Hanley, and she was a widowed lady, and she lived there with her son, who was 19, and friendly with my sisters, and I just remember him. And he was called up, and I think he was a lorry driver or something, and he went to Algiers, and
Oh gosh.
3 weeks later he was shot.
Ooh.
And
So his name will be on the war memorial.
Pardon?
His name will be on the war memorial.
Oh yes,
Yeah.
Richard Hadley.
Right. Yeah.
Richard Hadley. One of the 6, yeah.
Yes.
But you know, and anyway, it's just ironic how something worked out, because there's a family I may have told you before, called Morgan from Woolton. There were six brothers and 1 sister. The sister came last, but I think, without exception, well, they definitely all went into different things. One was one was a para, one was in the REME, one was in the Air Force, and so on. But the 6 of them went. Most of them saw active service, and they all came back. Everyone.
Oh gosh. I mean,
There's
that's
this poor lady with 1.